Good day. My name is Marion. I'm a business strategy consultant at Art Infographic, and today is basically the last presentation of my talk on breaking the small business mindset. And as you have gone through the lectures over the last few days, I'm sure that there are a lot of frameworks and strategies that you now can apply to your business and improve how you run your small business. And today's talk is probably much shorter than the lectures that we've had over the last couple of days, because we're really coming to the end of our slide deck. But we are talking about probably one of the least talked about and a thing that can really affect your business quite severely if you don't take it into account. And especially since we're talking about Japan and Japanese frameworks and that they are known for their innovation and adapting to market changes and that kind of thing. I think that it's really relevant to this talk. So we're going to talk about the ability to pivot and to change your strategies and understand emerging market trends and that kind of thing. These kind of terms kind of get thrown around, you know, by the internet gurus. It's like, oh, you need to be a trend spotter. But then when you start asking, how do I understand trends? How do I find out what trend to look for? Then they might throw out, oh, you must look at Google Trends, which really doesn't really tell you much. It tells you what is, well, when I say tell you much, it doesn't tell you much about the future trends and what's going down there. It's really kind of newsy stuff, you know, based on sport, pop culture, music. Nothing that's really, unless you're in those industries, going to really affect you. So where do you look and how do you do these things? And is it actually important as a small business to care about these things? Like, do you really care about the global political environment or what's happening, you know, with the FTSE or the NASDAQ? Like, does that actually affect you? Like, is it really important? So that's what I'm now going to talk about, is to explain from my experience why I think it's important and where you should look and how you should make decisions based on what's happening and what's trending and what's happening in the market. So I'm going to start off with a global market and just explain like why I strongly advise that you look at the global market basically on a daily basis. So let's start off there, is that in 2008 we had the global financial crisis, and that sort of started happening just before 2008. Things started looking a bit strange in the property market. And the reason why I knew that was I had been following it. I find international news very interesting, and I've always tried to stay up to speed of what was happening globally. If you take me to a coffee shop and there's newspapers around, I'll take a newspaper, I'll go through it. And really, newspapers are a very good place to start. And there's a reason why very successful business owners tend to have a newspaper delivered to them if they can, and they go through it on a regular basis, because it's from going through these newspapers that they can detect trends and market changes quite quickly. It's not that they're necessarily reading the actual content, the actual story, but they're taking bits and pieces out of the story and using it to kind of put the puzzle together and realize, okay, this is heading in a negative direction, or this is heading in a positive direction, and the chances or the probabilities of that affecting my industry, my country, or my work that I'm doing here. This is what the probability is like, and I've become very good at that. That is really a big passion of mine, strangely enough, but it really is. And I would say that it's a really good idea to not just look at the newspapers, but also, and when it comes to reading the newspapers, it's a really good idea to look at the quality. So, you know, in South Africa, we've got, well, I think any country, you've got like your main newspapers, and then we've got kind of sideline ones that are more appealing or in languages of smaller communities. And what I can say is that the smaller the community that it appeals to, the more local the news becomes, and the more biased it tends to become, because the journalists are there kind of telling the stories from their viewpoints. They don't have as many checks and balances in place where the news needs to be, and I have to be careful of saying this, because even the main newspapers, there'll be columns written by journalists that are opinion pieces, you know. So it's not that a main newspaper is totally factual, and it's really difficult. There's always two sides of the story, and some newspapers are more leaning towards, and I hate these terms, but leaning towards the right or the left, or are more liberal, or whatever's the story, and they'll tell the same story as another newspaper with a slightly different slant to it, because that's how they market themselves. That's how they've segmented themselves. So what I can say is that the smaller the newspaper, and the smaller the, you know, newsletters or magazines or whatever, the more opinionated and biased they seem to be, and more local and based on people and people's feelings, and that kind of thing, and you know, stories about the water pipe bursting down the road, or some pollution in the park, you know, in the neighborhood, that kind of stuff, that really, unless you are in the recycling industry, it really doesn't really affect you. You know, it's I'm talking about global news and how that can affect you, and it really does. It really does, and that's, I'm going to explain that now. So further to newspapers, so try to get, preferably on a weekly basis. Anything more than weekly, you land up with a room full of newspapers. So it gets a bit much. But I would say weekly or even fortnightly, to get a good copy of one of the top newspapers with the biggest readership, and then going through it. But when you go through it, try skimming through it, and try finding golden threads of what seems to be happening. Are there multiple conversations around particular products, you know, or issues, global issues that's happening in the world? And you'll often find that if you skim through a newspaper, you'll often find, like, wait a second, if I actually kind of look at these headings, about 60% of them are talking about the green economy, or 60% of them are talking about inflation rates in America, or whatever. And you can kind of pick up trends like that. So newspapers are a great place to start. Another place is the Right magazines. Now, you need to be careful with this, because when it comes to magazines that have to do with the economy, again, they tend to be filled with opinion pieces. And if you find magazines that are related to a segment of the economy, so for instance, maybe you'll read a magazine about farming and the farming industry, and it tends to not really give that much information. You might find some bits and pieces, and it's kind of difficult to explain because, like, there's a book called The Farmer's Almanac that comes out in America, and right now they're talking about how farmland is kind of moving out of the hands of the older generation, and these big corporations are wanting to buy this farmland up. There's about $27 trillion worth of farmland that has now recently become available for sale. So, there are these important sort of bits and pieces that come out of those magazines, and to be honest with you, looking at farmland information is also pretty important, because that explains things that are happening with resources, and resources affect economies. So that is something to kind of look at. But I'm talking about like magazines about trading or about cryptocurrency or things like that. They can be quite industry specific and opinion pieces on leaders. They thought leadership articles. And it's very much like, going to LinkedIn and reading some of the stuff that thought leaders put together over there. And you might get some golden nuggets of what's happening globally, but it's still quite a narrow focus. So you need to be careful of which magazines and newspapers that you actually read. So I like to read like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Economist, those kind of things. I prefer to read news than actually watch the news, especially very, very extreme left or right. Like I just find that a lot of like CNN or Sky News or Fox News or whatever, a lot of their reporting is based on trying to get people hyped up and on the side of their team. It's a lot of cheerleading that goes on there, that, it's like, we are better than the blue team, we are better than the red team, rah, rah, rah. And so I would say try and steer away from those. But at the same time, I would kind of dot my news with that as well during the day. But don't find yourself just watching CNN or just watching Fox or just watching BBC or just watching The Guardian. Like try and, if you find a particular story interesting, try and watch the same sort of length videos, but from alternative news sources, and kind of see if you can kind of find your own middle road out of the information that you're getting. So yeah, I'm not political. I'm not a political person. I feel that's I find it like a sports team, and kind of cheering for a sports team. At the end of the day, I just want the best for each country. It's, this whole thing about putting leaders on a pedestal, and I don't know, for me it's about the policies, about how you run the country. And I would rather actually, instead of having leaders making the decisions, be in a situation where those kind of decisions are more in the hands of the people and give people more power. So I'm not really political, so don't ask me which newspapers are right or left or whatever. I really don't care. I look at the facts and the information and kind of weigh it up, and then, you know, put my hypothesis together and my way of thinking. And I also don't become fixed on an idea. I'm quite open to hearing other people's ideas and opinions, and then being able to weigh it up with mine. As long as those people aren't forceful and telling me that my ideas are wrong, I'm open to listening to their ideas, because very often I've found that there's an alternative to my way of thinking, and I'm very often wrong, and I'm ready to learn. And you know, that's what conversation's about, right? But so the newspapers, very good. Magazines, be careful, choose them properly. And what I would say is that when you're looking at innovation, a really good magazine, crazy enough to read, is the Popular Mechanic. Now that is more about like industry and, you know, AI and manufacturing and those kind of things. And generally people would assume that that's more of a male readership. But even as a female entrepreneur going through that, it's generally pretty spot on the future of like AI or industry, or, you know, the tools that affect your business. And you can kind of get an idea of things that are happening as far as the market changing. So now, why would you as a small business want to look at like international global affairs, and why is that important to you as a small business? Like, why should you care? Like right now, all you care about is bottling pickles and selling them at the market on a Saturday morning, for instance. So let me tell you an anecdotal thing from my side is that I was a photographer. Just before 2008, I'd started up my photography studio. My husband and I had a number of businesses. All those businesses were doing very well. And I actually had a young child, and he said to me, I can kind of stay at home and do my own thing because our businesses were doing well enough. And I wanted to do something for myself, and I landed up with another business that eventually branched into doing photography. And because our businesses were doing so well, and my husband was quite a spender, I bought 2 properties. So I was focused more on investment and that kind of thing. And he was spending left, right, and center. And he bought boats and quad bikes, and he moved his business from one property to the next and paying deposits each time. And he was just spending money all over the show. We had quite a few cars, and quite a lot of luxury items. And then, as I said, we had a couple of properties. And then 2008 hit. But because since I was a teenager, I've always found like global issues interesting, and I've always followed the news, and I've always kept tabs on what was happening, in particular in America, because what happens in America seems to have a knock-on effect, and it affects South Africa in about 1.5 to 2 years' time. We get that knock-on effect. So as an example, now in 2024, America's sitting with huge homelessness issues, there's inflation issues, there's huge taxes in areas like California, Hollywood is basically closed down. And I was reading an article this morning about how the government is now really affecting the real estate market. And I've been looking at the real estate market in New York City as an example, and like the high crime rates that they experiencing in certain pockets of the country. There's those kind of things that are going on. And I'm just keeping tabs on all of that because I know that a lot of those trends kind of affect South Africa down the line. Not saying that we're going to have exactly the same things happening, but it's going to have an impact in one way or another in South Africa. And the whole way of monitoring trends is to try and understand as the story unfolds how it is impacting my country. So because I have been watching the trends, and for me, my preferred investment vehicle is property. I've always found real estate very interesting. I saw that there was things happening in the real estate market in the sort of late 2007. You know, before the whole crisis happened, I kind of saw stuff was, wait a second, this is, I don't, you know, they were changing the contracts on the bonds. And it's also because I was buying properties at the same time in South Africa. And, you know, there was this, you know, whether you actually link your interest rate to the prime rates and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, what's going on here? There's something strange happening in the property market in America. And I told my husband, I said, you know, there's something going on here. And because of that, we started advertising for tenants on one of our properties. You know, and we were looking to actually sell that property. Although we had kind of just bought it, we didn't want to sit with a problem because we saw that there was stuff going down in America. So we put it on the market to sell it. We weren't able to sell it, but we were able to get tenants into the property at the right price and at the right time. And then we also started selling off our luxury items, the boats, the quad bikes. We moved my husband's business onto our property, built huts and that, and moved the whole business and all our staff over there. So then we cut down on paying rent for our business because it was on our property. And we started making these changes. We did some fixing up of our property so that we could get an evaluator in who could then advise us and value the property at a higher rate, and we could get a larger access bond on our business, on our property. So we could kind of make these really big decisions prior to when things really got bad in South Africa, and the interest rates just went through the roof. We had put these things in place to kind of mediate what was coming, and we knew what was coming based on what was happening in America. And we actually had debts that we owed my husband's family, and we started buying up gold and gave it to our husband's family instead of actually paying off the debt, because they said they didn't want us to pay off the debt. They didn't care when we paid it off. But we just felt that, you know, it's better that we do that. So we bought gold, and because the price of gold, you know, when you watch these trends, you realize, okay, so the price of gold is pretty good right now, and we've got some money coming in. Let's buy it now at this price. And we were able to buy quite a bit of gold, and we gave it back to our family as our way of paying back the debt, a loan that we had got from them. So not only did we pay off our loan, but then when the gold price went up, they were able to sell off the gold at a premium price, and they made money on that. So nobody lost. I mean, we got our loan, we paid off our loan, and they made money in the way that we had paid off our loan. So that all comes from following trends, following global trends, and and those were kind of decisions we made for our family. Now, how does that relate to small business, though? So at the time, as I said, I was doing photography, and I'd been doing it for a couple of years prior to the 2008 crisis, and I'd been selling packages, and it included a certain number of photos on a CD to the clients. And I saw this happening and coming our way, and I thought, with photography, it's quite interesting in that it's a luxury item. It's not a need, it's a want. It's like, if you weighing up between paying rent and food and going for a photo shoot, it doesn't fall in that same sort of category as clothing and shelter and food and that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, people want to have good quality memories and photos of their families, and I find that people are prepared to kind of scrape together money so that they could get a good quality photo shoot every once in a while. And this was before the time of smartphones really being adapted. Digital cameras had really only just come out. So when I saw this happening in America and heading our way, I decided to change my business model from selling packages, photography packages, to selling photos individually with a minimum order of photos, just to cover the cost of really my time of the photo shoot. It wasn't really to make any money, because I was running a really profitable business. And the reason why it did so well, it did well during the 2008 crisis, is because I could tailor my packages to people's budgets. So photo shoots were seen as a luxury item, and I was in the same target market of, I was appealing to the higher middle income and the higher income brackets. I did celebrity shoots. I did a lot of top executives. I did the whole of Deloitte and Touche. All their top execs that were clients of mine. So I was dealing with these high income people, and my whole branding and everything was around that. But I realized even the high income people, myself being one of them, was really taking financial strain, because we had all these luxury items and properties and things. And the whole 2008 crisis really affected the higher income bracket in a big way. And I can tell you, if you're earning a lot of money and then suddenly you have that carpet pulled out from under you and you're having to pay these huge interest rates, and it's quite a fall. It's quite a shock. And how do you manage that? And so the other photographers in my bracket were selling their photo shoots at high prices, and they didn't pivot. Some of them were offering some discounts and some promotional packages, but they became very quiet, and so many studios actually closed down, which is sad. But my studio was thriving. I had to employ people on. I eventually actually needed to franchise so that I could open up more studios, because I was doing 40 shoots a month. And that was just a lot. I was shooting over weekends. I was editing till 2 in the morning. And my studio was just so popular. And I made quite a lot of money. And then I started selling franchises, and I made a lot of money selling franchises. So that is why it's important to kind of look at what's happening in the global trends of things. And now with 2024 being what it is, and there's so much activity globally, there's so much that needs to be addressed, and that's going to affect so much stuff. I mean, it's just crazy. We're sitting with wars, and we're sitting with inflation, and we're sitting with recessions and elections, and these very powerful leaders, and there's and the environmental issues, and natural disasters, and there's like a lot going on, and all of those in one way or another can affect you, can affect your country, and can affect your small business. And you kind of need to just be very aware and open to it, not tied in to the actual storyline and to the personalities inside it. You need to be able to look at it and say, okay, there's a trend that's happening here. There's a lot of farmland that's being opening up to being bought, and there's corporates that are interested in buying that farmland. And okay, so there might be a trend that's going to be happening over there. Or, there's stuff that's happening in the UK at the moment, and that can affect something there. Like, you would wonder, like, why is something that's happening in the UK with the immigration and the riots and everything that they've had in the UK, how does that affect South Africa? Well, I can say, as somebody who drives around in an Uber, like, a lot of the drivers over here, when I talk to them and I ask them, like, is this like a side hustle? What do they do? A lot of them are actually saving up enough money to go to the UK to go and work in the healthcare industry as caregivers and as paramedics and so on, and to train in the healthcare in the UK. And then when you go and check the trends of, like, the NHS in the UK and the amount of immigrants that they're employing into the healthcare sector, and then you look at the riots and what's happening over there, where people are upset with the number of immigrants that are coming into the UK, it all kind of ties into each other. And how that affects you as a small business might not be completely clear, but you need to kind of know about those things, because at some point it will just be like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that event, I can see how that could affect the gold price. Or, oh, that event, I can see that can, affect housing prices, or whatever's the story. So you kind of need to take those, you kind of have to uncover your eyes. You kind of have to take your head out of the sand and look around, and not get tied up in a story, not become like a politician and start becoming opinionated. That's the last thing that I'm asking. I don't want people that are opinionated. I'm saying, look at multiple opinions and look at multiple facts and look for trends, look for golden threads, look for things that can impact you, and just be aware of what is going on around you. So that is something that small businesses don't do. They're like, why? Why is that important to me? All right, so those are the points about understanding the global market and what the global market is doing, and not having your head in the sand. You need to look at these things every once in a while. And I'm not saying go into social media and doom scroll for hours and hours on end. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you need to be quite intentional about how you do it. Now, in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about your circle of influence. And it's really about being able to focus on things that you can control. And having these other things happening globally and that you've got absolutely no control over it. And when I learned about that and started making it a habit of actually really just bringing things close to home, does this information that I'm hearing in the news, does it really actually affect me here and now? If there comes a point where a meteor is going to be landing on Earth and the Earth is going to be obliterated, or there's something going to be happening locally, that I must just have some faith that I will get the message. If it's important enough, I'll get the message. But most of what I was watching in the news was really negative. It was really affecting me by hearing all of this stuff all the time. So that kind of flies in the face of what I've been telling you. And I can tell you how you can kind of balance it out. It was about the same sort of time as the 2008 crisis, where I actually decided to take a complete break from news. Stop watching news on television, stop listening to news on radio. Like, really stop going to find news and watch what's going on news-wise. And that really brought a lot of peace. I felt much happier as a person, and I would still highly recommend it. So what I'm saying to you is that you've got to be quite intentional about the information that you take in. Once I had taken a break from, you know, in inverted commas, mass media, but it's really sort of that pop culture news, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like popcorn, you know, it's the stuff that you get on CNN and, you know, in that sort of news bulletin break, that half-an-hour break or whatever, like on the radio, those kind of bite-sized bits of information. And it's like, you know, if you stay away from it long enough, then the people that they talk about, the minister of this and the minister of that, like, I don't know who these people are, and they're always involved in some sort of corruption and some sort of crime or whatever. At one stage, I kind of knew all of who they were. Like, really, does it matter? Does it matter? You know? So to step away from this sort of bite-sized news, negative stuff that's going on, and, you know, today there's a car crash, another day there's a murder, it builds on you and it affects your mental health. So what I'm saying is, be intentional about the news that you get. So if you do take up a newspaper once a week, like, don't go and get really tied into the stories. It's really just to skim over the stuff and look at, oh, this is trending, that's trending, and getting an idea of an overall feel of what's going on. And when you read an article, like, read a well-written article by The Economist, for instance, where there are statistics, where there's real information, instead of just some news anchor saying, oh, you know, this crisis has happened. Like, really go and go and read a thought piece about it, not an opinion piece necessarily, something where there's been, like, almost like a documentary, you know, whether it's written or you watch it, and get much better quality information. But still, it's a really good idea to see what's happening globally and to try and understand what's happening with the trends there. There's a lady that I like to follow because she's been on point for, I think it's like 50 years now, and her name is Faith Popcorn. And she has something called the Brain Reserve, and she's got 17 trends in the Brain Reserve. And it's basically 17 points of innovation that seem to kind of come together, and when 2 or 3 of those points come together, then a trend emerges. And I like to watch what she's predicting, because she's a futurist, and she's kind of been on spot, I don't know what's the word, on point of what trends are happening in the future. And it's also a good idea if you go to a bookshop to go and find books that are written by futurists and go and find, common futurists and what they are saying. Some of the bigger people, the people in higher positions in things like Google, or like there's a guy that I follow. His name is Naval Ravikant, and he's buys into businesses, and he's a billionaire, and he owns AngelList. So when it comes to understanding trends of businesses, he's a very good person to follow, because he's involved in multi-billion companies, that kind of thing. So rather than following some minister, politician wannabe, like, rather go and find the futurists, go and find the people that, and nowadays, because they have podcasts and they have articles and things like that, you can really follow them and find that information and get a better handle of things like that. So I think we've kind of covered that, the importance of understanding market changes and then applying it to your business. Like, small businesses just don't do this. They just don't. They just like, okay, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect my family. So, and then when something happens, they're like, oh, wow, we didn't know that. Like, if you can stay ahead of the curve, you can understand how to negotiate on your insurance rates. You can understand when to buy investments, when to sell investments off, like what happened with my husband and I in 2008. What kind of businesses to open, how to pivot your business when something new comes along. So I had a product where we did babies' hand and footprints in clay, and I had a proper kiln, and I'd fire clay. I'd roll out this potter's clay every day, and the parents would have their children's prints done in the clay, and then I'd fire it in the kiln. And it was at the time where load shedding started happening in South Africa, which is basically power cuts, scheduled power cuts. And a kiln can't have a power cut happen during the middle of firing, because if the stuff cools down too quickly, it cracks. And that's what started happening with work that I had in the kiln. I remember the one day I was busy rolling out clay, and I just heard pop, 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 as these hand and footprints of these newborn babies, the clay just started exploding because the power had gone out. And when I say scheduled power outages at the time, it wasn't really scheduled. It would happen at any time. So I couldn't really work around that. I just, hoped and prayed that everything would be fine. And then it actually happened twice. And at that point, I was like, I got to make a plan and find an alternative clay that doesn't need to be fired in a kiln. And I tested various clays and made my own, followed recipes and all sorts of things until I found the perfect clay that was air drying. And once I did that, then I was actually able to franchise that business, because the business wasn't being affected by things that were happening locally, which is the load shedding. And that's just another example, is that when you see what's kind of going on around you, and you can adapt and pivot, you don't necessarily have to stop what you're doing and do something else completely. Like, you can become innovative in that environment. A lot of people would think in terms of there being power outages. Oh, okay, so now I need to start selling solar power. But you must also understand that everybody else is coming up with that idea, and you are going into a situation where, again, the red ocean situation where there's a lot of competition, you know, so you've got to sit down and think, okay, so what is the solar energy industry going to need? You know, what kind of service do they need? Is it that I can create specific brackets that work better than the ones that are shipped in from China, or whatever's the situation? I'm just using hypothetical examples here. Or is it a skill set? Can I train up teams of solar power installers that you can then hire on a job-to-job basis, and then you don't have to keep permanent staff members? And that's a really good idea, actually. I don't know why somebody doesn't do that. Like, you can take my idea there. But yeah, and then you can offer like an outsourced service of trained up technicians that people then hire, and then they come in and they install the stuff, and then you can open up a company and only pay per job for the labor. You know, you got to kind of think a little bit like that. Don't just do exactly the same as everybody else is. Like, look at the trend, see what's happening around you, and see, okay, everybody's going to jump at that opportunity, but what kind of service do those people need? And how can I supply that? And therein, you create innovation, you create a product or a service that is pretty unique and in high demand. So these are just various ways of thinking of things like that. Again, I do offer consultation on this. I'm very creative thinking, very innovation thinking, and I like to push you very much beyond your comfort zone. So whatever it is that you're doing, I can definitely offer alternative solutions and things that you can add to your existing business model in order to generate many more, you know, much more income on your business. And a lot of it's got to do with pivoting your business and being innovative and looking at new ways of thinking of how you conduct your business right now. So another problem that small businesses have is this inconsistent branding and messaging. And again, I'm just going to keep this really short, because the reason why you have inconsistent branding and messaging is because you're not doing it enough. And I know this is probably quite shocking to you, because you think that you're doing a lot of social media, you're doing a lot of branding and messaging. I can tell you, you're not doing enough. You really need to be posting on each social media platform probably once, if not 3 times a day. You need to be doing that, and that's per platform. And it's not bad. Like right now, I'm really building up my LinkedIn platform, so I'm really focusing on LinkedIn. And I've never had Instagram. I don't have Instagram right now. I'm really focusing on LinkedIn, but you know, there I'm putting up 3 to 5 posts a day. So you really need to get a good handle on the platform that you're working with. A lot of small business owners, they're like, oh, I don't really want to do marketing, and I'd rather hire somebody to do it. At the end of the day, going back to that analogy of it being your studio, and you're inviting people in to have a conversation with you, and you are showing them and showcasing what it is that you're about and what you're passionate about. I really wouldn't suggest for small business owners to step away from their messaging and branding. I think that is a big mistake, that they like, oh, this isn't something that I'm comfortable with, it's not something that I enjoy doing, so therefore I'll rather hire somebody who's good at it and enjoys doing it. I think people do that way too early. Again, going back to the analogy, like when I was a hotel manager, but then the rule of the hotel was everybody that was hired in the hotel had to work 3 months in front of office to understand the hotel. You need to work in marketing for a long enough period with your brand, with your customers, with your messaging before you outsource it. And I know that is really controversial and maybe not what you want to be hearing, but that is really my recommendation. The minimum community size is something called Dunbar's number, which is 150 people. Dunbar, I think it's Robert Dunbar, if I'm not mistaken. He was an anthropologist, and he looked at tribes and communities of people, and it was realized that the optimal number of people in a community is 150 people. So you came up with this Dunbar's number. And until you have a community of 150 really engaging clients or relationships, I would not outsource my marketing. I would not source my engagement with my community. It's like saying, I care about my community, but, you know, speak to this guy, don't speak to me, because I'm not comfortable with it. Like, how successful do you think that's going to be? Like, honestly, how successful do you think that's going to be? It's like, okay, I want to be a politician. I want to stand up for change and policy, and I want to make a stand about all of that. But I don't want to do any public speaking, so I'm not going to do any like political campaigns. Here's this guy who will do it instead of me. And that's really what it's like hiring a marketing team to do your work. So again, this is where small businesses get marketing and advertising confused. If it's about design and you don't know how to design something, you know, then you need to really hire a graphics designer, somebody who understands maybe advertising copy. They call it ad copy, you know, and people that have done social media tend to be a little bit more clued up on what graphics design works and what ad copy works. But don't confuse the two. Communicating over social media generally is marketing. And if you want sales, you really want to be hiring somebody who's a graphics designer and has experience in ad copy, rather than hiring somebody in marketing or somebody who knows social media. You're not going to have the success that you need to have. They're two different skill sets completely. So sure, if you want somebody to help you get more sales, then to hire somebody in advertising to help you with your advertising on social media. But there you also really need a budget for your adverts. And I've explained to you that the size of the target market that you need to be attracting, you need to be able to reach at a minimum 30,000 views. And 30,000 views, you want to achieve at least 4 times. That people see that advert at least 4 times, because the rate of conversion goes really, they become a loyal client, as spoken about in previous presentations, about the 4th time that they're exposed to your service. So you need to basically reach 120,000 people, and you need to have the budget to reach that number of people before you can start really getting a return on your investment with advertising. So if you don't have that kind of budget, then, you know, advertising and marketing are 2 different skill sets. And I can say you'd probably have much more success if you yourself had to learn the basics of design, and you can do that on Canva, and the basics of good ad copy, and you can have AI help you with that, and that you keep a handle on your marketing and you do your own marketing, and you do it till you've got a community of 150 people. And until you got to a point where you've got organic marketing that's going out to about 120,000 views. And then obviously at that point, it's just, you're going to be generating enough income and you'll be getting enough views that you can outsource. And by then you would have had so much practice, you would have created SOPs, you would have had a proper system that you can now pass on to your advertising guys or your marketing guys. At this point, you can have a marketing team and you hand it over to them and you say, okay, this is my brand guideline. And this is how often we put stuff out. And this is kind of the messaging that we have. And then you can guide them on that. But I honestly believe that small business owners, because they feel, they hear this idea that they need to hire staff and that they mustn't do all the work themselves and they must get experts to help them with certain areas of their business. And they feel that marketing is important, but they're not prepared to do the work. They're not prepared to actually walk the walk. All right, so today's been a little bit disruptive in our presentation, but I'm going to continue with the inconsistent branding and messaging. I think I've made my point now on the fact is you aren't doing it enough and you are trying to hand it over to other people too soon because you're not willing to put in the time and the effort to do it yourself. And doing that too soon is a big mistake that small businesses make. If you've got somebody who's on your team and I've mentioned before, I'm very much in co-location. So if there's somebody who's really on your property on a daily basis with you and you can work on marketing together and they can do some of the design work and all of that, but you still need to really be doing it very much yourself. You know, there's things that are repetitive tasks, so the scheduling of social media posts or the creation of the actual adverts and that. And you might feel that the best way to handle that is to give it to somebody else and your time can be better spent somewhere else. And I agree with that. Once you are an expert in that area of your business, there are three main areas of your business that I think small businesses should focus on. The core being the finances, and then the two sidekicks. The one sidekick is marketing and sales, and the other sidekick is HR. And on all three of those, you need to be an expert. So stop focusing so much on your product and on the delivery of your service. That's part of your work, but really become an expert at finances, become an expert at marketing and sales and at HR. Don't outsource these departments until you understand them well enough. And again, that might not be very popular. It's something that you might not agree with. I don't care. I can tell you that if you do your own marketing and you get your client base to the right amount and you're getting your message out to the right amount of people, then that is the time to pass it on to somebody else. If you don't have the skill set and you need to do training, or you've got to hire somebody who's already been trained that can sit with you and work with you and help train you and do some of the work, then that's fine. But this whole idea of delegating it to somebody else and they must just make magic happen. Unless you've got a very big budget for that, I really wouldn't recommend it. Right, so in our company, back to the Japanese concepts, there's Shitsukan, and that means sense of quality. And when you go and check this concept out, you'll see that it is more a perception of quality. And it's really about all the senses, the visual, auditory, that holistic, a kind of sense of quality. You can't really put your finger on it, but it's that the information that you're giving is high quality. The service that you're giving is high quality. The way you conduct your business is high quality. Like on every level, that consistency, reliability, integrity, and quality comes through. You need to be able to align your message with your personality. You can't say one thing, and this is where I've got a problem with my mentor again, is that he says one thing. He says, you know, he wants to work with old money and with, it's really old money, people that have inherited wealth or have built up their wealth to be on a high level. But I was on a sales call on the weekend with his team, and they were speaking to high-end individuals as if they were selling them a second-hand car, you know, a used car. They were using sales tactics that were sleazy, and really, it's not how you would talk to people with old money. It's how you would talk to teenagers that had just made their first million, but not how you would talk to billionaires. And I mean, my mentor does work with billionaires, but you know, the way the whole sales of his business is very cheesy. And so what he says and how he actually markets himself are not the same. And as a result, he gives off he gets a lot of people that are accusing him of being scammy. And that is because there isn't an alignment of that integrity or that sense of quality. Things seem to be done quite sloppy and as quickly as possible, and which as you've realized, like, I'm very much about experimenting, getting your brand and messaging out there on a daily basis, you know, really being active and getting the stuff out there and doing things quickly. But that doesn't have to equate to sloppiness. Like, don't sacrifice quality with speed. You need speed. Like, to stop being slow. You got to do stuff. You got to create stuff. You are a creator, and you've got a lot of competition. You need to put stuff out there, and you need to put it together quickly and get it out there, and all of that. But don't be sloppy about it. Like, everything that you do, try and do to perfection, and try and bring that sense of quality out as best you can. Like, this whole thing about my presentation, I mean, I've given now 6 hours of talking, and the quality of my audio is not great. That is very upsetting to me. Like, I unfortunately don't have the gear or the software to improve the quality right now. So I'm getting it out there, and this is the best quality that I can offer. And the fact that it isn't great quality upsets me. But I'm still working towards producing something of quality. I'm not just producing something for the sake of producing it and then just being kind of sloppy in doing it so it just gets done. You kind of have to balance both of those aspects. Do as much as you can, as quickly as you can, but at the highest quality that you can. You can always go back and improve. Like I could always go and get the equipment and then re-record these videos at a later stage. And that's where Kaizen comes in and this continuous improvement comes in. But at least I'm getting stuff out there. But ideally, I would have wanted to have it at a better quality so that it's at better than a good enough quality. And right now it's under par. It's not good enough. It's not good enough for me. And that should come through in the culture of your business. That sort of perfectionism should come through in the culture of your business, and it should come through in your messaging and branding. Like, decide on colors of your logo, decide on colors of your branding, put together a media pack, put together brand guidelines, and stick to that. I know you might find it boring, but you have to look at your brand every single day, and don't now go and change it. If your branding is red, don't now start incorporating pinks into your branding and then next week purples. Like, stick to your branding. As much as it's not creative for you and you might get bored and you want to try new things and stuff like that, like that just reeks of being amateur. If you look at the brands that do well, they've been doing well for decades, and there's been slight changes over the time period. Not every week, not every month, not like small businesses do it, where they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to change this font, I'm going to do this. Like, try and get like brand guidelines, stick to that. Again, the whole idea of standardization is one of the foundational stones of Kaizen. You need that standardized look and feel, because you want to get it to a point where people see your business 4 times and be able to recognize that it comes from the same business 4 times, because that's when they start becoming more loyal to your brand. And that's not going to happen if you're changing your message and you're changing your branding every time that you get a feeling of being a little bit bored and you want to experiment with your brand. Like, when I say experiment, I'm talking about trying new platforms, getting your message out, designing a PDF, creating a talk, doing podcasts, doing different things, different activities, but keep your branding and your messaging the same. That way you can build trust and recognition. And the point that's right at the end here is commit to excellence. Make that decision to be as excellent as you can be. Companies are known for excellence. It's a really important trait to have. Strive for excellence, commit to excellence. So the conclusion of all these hours of talk is really that you need to shift your mindset from personal growth to business growth. You've got to start thinking about your business as a business, running it as a business. Your personal goals can be tied in to the success of your business, but don't have your whole business running around your feelings, your moods and emotions, and your personal achievements and goals and how you want to live your day. Plan your business, do it properly, and then adapt things so that you've got a good balance between your personal life and your business life. Right now, I can assure you, you are too heavily invested in your personal life. And you've got to really start focusing on your business and setting it up properly, and then allowing the rewards of your business to then help you with your personal life, not the other way around. And key points here are an emphasis on your dedication, your planning, which, again, I can guarantee you haven't done properly. You haven't planned properly. And I hope that these lectures And this presentation has taught you where your planning is wrong and how you can plan your business better. And then the whole concept of teamwork. Teamwork of your staff, how to be a leader, how to do collaborations, how to really your leadership, and how you set up your org chart, and how you hire people, and how you train and develop them, and then how you work with them, how you solve problems with them, how you understand the legalities, how do you train your staff. All of this stuff I've covered in the presentations, and I hope that it's helped you, because those are really important. There's been an emphasis on your dedication, your planning, and your teamwork. And on the very, very last point of this whole talk is that you want to commit to building a sustainable business foundation. And this is what this is all about, is building a foundation not based on your gut instincts, not based on what you think small business is about, but actually building the proper foundations in place. As a leader, you are spending time on the wrong things. You need to be spending time on your operational manual. You need to be training your staff. You need to be understanding your finances and your metrics. You need to have a better handle on your marketing and doing much of it yourself. But instead, you are fulfilling orders. Rather hire somebody to do that, and you do the things that you need to be doing. Why are you hiring other people to do your accounting and to do your marketing? Why don't you have an HR department? Because you're too busy fulfilling your orders. That is something you can train other people to do. And then you just make sure that the quality is right. Okay, so thank you so much for being here, for being at these lectures. It's been a number of hours that you've been listening to me, explaining what works, what doesn't work, how you can apply it into your business, how we apply it, and our value system and our way of operating. And again, if you've got any questions, you're welcome to ask them. You can reach out. I'm available on LinkedIn. You can just send me a message there. There's a link to our website in the description below. You can pop me an email and we can take it further from there. I have one-on-one consultations. They're an hour long each, and I tailor it to what's happening in your business. Even better, I've got programs and they include consultations, and it works out at a much more affordable rate. And then we go step by step through the processes of your company and make sure that all the things are right. You know, whether it's your website and or your social media or your marketing or whatever, and it's these step-by-step programs that we have. There's a lot to cover. There's really a lot to cover if you're going to run a small business properly. And again, this presentation has come about as pushback from small businesses that aren't prepared to put in the time and effort to run their business anything bigger than a hobby. But they've got these big dreams of, you know, becoming highly financially successful, but they're not prepared to put the work in. And I hope that this has kind of opened your eyes and realize what it takes to run a successful business, and that at least you are aware, and hopefully you start applying some of these things and you will see that they do make a difference. There is the compound effect. You might not necessarily see differences immediately, although the chances are really good. But with time, as this becomes a practice, as it becomes a culture in your business, that you can see the benefits of it, And, you know, it might take a little while, but you will definitely see the benefits of it. And then on top of it, I really just want to thank you. It's been a lot of hours and a lot of stuff that I've had to cover. And just listening to it, never mind taking the time to actually implement it. And then for any future staff members that are listening to this as part of their training, so that they understand what it's like working in Art Infographic and with me as their leader, I hope that that clarifies how we operate and that you feel comfortable and welcomed coming into the company, but that you're also clear on how we operate. And when you are working with our clients, that you understand kind of the level that we operate on and how we try and improve the small business owners that work with us, but also so that you have a clearer idea of how things are run in medium and large business, where these practices are the practices that is common in medium and large businesses, and helping small business to really understand how, you know, that kind of culture and how they can fit into that, or use the techniques that are used in those industries to improve their existing models. But yes, we do work with big brands, we work with top executives, and you also need to really understand how their business model works. And if you haven't worked in large corporates, I hope that these videos have also just clarified that a little bit for you, so that you understand, so that you don't come in like a cowboy and not really understanding what it takes to run a successful department. You know, so a lot of these companies are like conglomerates, and they might have subdivisions, they might have small sub-businesses with subdivisions in them. These apply for departments, for subdivisions, or for entire companies, depending on the size and the number of people that are in it. But it can just give you an idea. A lot of people have misconceptions of how businesses are run, and at least this can show you the systems that they work within. All right, so thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that at some point maybe our paths can cross. If there's any way that I can assist you, please go and look at some of the other YouTube videos, go and visit our website. If you need any help with anything, whether it's with finances or running a business or marketing, or there's a whole lot of things that we cover on entrepreneurship and that, please feel free to reach out, and I'm sure I can help you on one level or another. If I can't help personally, I can point you in a direction. And yeah, I'm pretty knowledgeable. I can really point you to some of the top people that can assist you, and some top resources that can help answer some of your questions. Yeah, so hopefully, as I say, maybe our paths cross, and I look forward to doing business with you in the future. And you're welcome in my studio at any time. And if you're ever in Johannesburg, you can give me a shout and we can have a cup of coffee and we can talk business. If you need a joint venture partner, anything like that, I'm very keen to also talk about investments, you know, being involved in new businesses that are starting up, being a board of, you know, being on the board of directors, anything like that. You're welcome to reach out to me as well. So again, thank you for your time and have a wonderful day. Bye.